Hi, welcome back to Follet, the video novel. This little snippet is the second part of Chapter 9, where Meri and Follet have arrived in Memphis, Tennessee, and are staying at the Commodore Hotel. Meri just got back from a job and finds Follet in the shower. And we can go on from there. Then Meri moved her hands from his to under Follet's arms and rubbed the soap against his hair, once again fingering the muscles and tendons she found there. When she slid her soapy hands out from his armpits and over his shoulders and his collarbones to his throat, she took her hands away, reached back to the shelf for the soap, held the soap again under the water, and rubbed it again until it erupted in a flood of bubbles. She reached behind him again to return the soap and then brought both her hands back to his neck. She placed her thumbs in his jugular notch and wrapped her fingers around his throat, rubbing the soap into the long muscles and then moving behind his neck to soap his spine. She moved her hands from his neck so that her fingers held his chin and drew him down to her kiss, just her lips touching his, softly pressing, mouthing, and breaking away. She soaped her hands again and moved them to his belly, and then down past his navel to his loins and then to his pubic mound. She washed him there with her soapy fingers, pausing to renew the suds before moving down to soap his cock and balls. She slid her slick hand between his legs to clean his inner thighs and perineum. Then she knelt to rub the soap into the muscles of his thighs, first right and then left, down each leg one at a time to his knee, and then to his shin, and then to his ankle. "Pick up your foot," she told Follet, "the right one." And she soaped his foot top to bottom, heel to toe. "The other one," she said. Follet lowered his right foot and then raised his left foot for Meri's ministrations. "Now turn around," she told him, "and spread your legs apart." Follet turned around so that the rush of water from the third shower head splashed just below his chin. Follet reached for the handle to make the water warmer. Meri now knelt behind him and started at his ankles, working her soapy hands up his legs, massaging, squeezing, and scrubbing every inch of him. She stood when she came to the top of his thighs and soaped her hands again. She slid her hands over his ass, grabbing his cheeks, one in each hand, and moving them apart. Her fingers rubbed the sides of his ass, and her thumbs rubbed and pressed in the cleft between the two muscular globes. She moved her thumbs to circle his anus, massaging the tight sphincter and pushing against it. Not enough to open him, but enough to push him to arousal. Follet's cock hardened as Meri's thumbs pushed against him, promising, demanding, and ultimately becoming nothing more than a memory. She soaped her hands again and moved up his back. Her cleansing of him was like a ritual, a purifying that Follet knew promised entry to her temple. She stood behind him. Follet felt her hands leave his skin. Meri reached to the shelf for the shampoo. She poured a generous blob into her hand and slid the fingers of both of her hands up the back of his neck and into his hair. She massaged the shampoo into his scalp until Follet wanted to close his eyes and sleep. As her fingers worked the shampoo, Follet thought he smelled something sweet, citrusy, almost boozy, bergamot, and then lemon, and then lavender and rosemary, and then cinnamon, and rose and jasmine, a clean and classic bouquet of scents. She took her hands from his hair and rinsed them under the spray. Then she reached for one of the shower heads and pulled it from the wall to spray Follet clean. She began at the top of his head and moved the spray down his back. She rinsed his buttocks and then proceeded to spray his legs all the way down to his feet. She moved the shower head once again to his ass, and with one hand separated the cheeks and focused the jet on his anus and then on the skin between his sphincter and his scrotum. Then she turned Follet around and sprayed the soap off his front from feet to face. When she came to his penis and balls, she sprayed the water over her hand and laved him carefully, making sure to wrap her hand around the shaft of his cock and stroke him, and to cup his scrotum, squeezing him just a little. She then moved the spray up his abdomen to his belly, to his chest, under his arms. She sprayed water on her hands so that she could rinse the column of his neck. Finally, she rinsed the soap from his arms and hands, but she ghosted her fingers from his shoulders to his forearms to his wrists and his hands before she was finished. When Follet was rinsed clean, Meri kissed him again, softly and sweetly, but broke away to take his hand to lead him to the bed. As they walked out of the shower, Follet said, "Meri, I'm still wet." "Me too, Follet." Follet grinned and let Meri lead him to the bed. "Sit down," she said. "I brought you a present." Follet sat at the head of the bed with one leg stuck out toward the foot of the bed and the other bent at the knee, his foot flat on the bed, leaning against the headboard. Meri moved beside the bed up to Follet, leaned over to kiss him quickly, and then reached over to grab all of the pillows. She tossed them into a pile at the other end of the bed. Then she walked over to the door and brought the mahogany sack-back Windsor chair that sat next to the door and put it next to the bed. Then she walked to the dresser and reached into a paper bag that sat there. She pulled out a bottle, 2 stemmed glasses, and a corkscrew, and used it to open the bottle. She lifted the bottle to her nose and closed her eyes as she inhaled its aroma. Then she smiled, put the bottle down, sealed it with the cork, and wiped her lips with the back of her hand. She smiled. She reached into the bag again and pulled out 6 little bottles. She picked them up one at a time, opened them one at a time, and breathed in each one's aroma one at a time. She propped herself, half sitting on the edge of the low dresser, and raised her right leg, bending it at the knee, opening her legs for Follet to see so that he could study her porcelain skin and the dark red hair that curled between her legs. She opened one of the little bottles and brought it to her mouth. She held it an inch away from her lips and stuck just the tip of her tongue into the mouth of the little jar, her gaze boring into his eyes. She closed her eyes and smiled as she took her tongue away from the bottle. In the middle of the dresser was a silver plate Edwardian galley tray. Meri placed the 6 little bottles, the 2 glasses, and the large bottle onto it and brought it to the bedside, setting it carefully on the seat of the chair. "What have you got here?" Follet asked her. "I brought us Bunratty mead for our first night together. I stopped by the bar in the lobby and asked Ashmedai if he had any glasses for special occasions." She told him. The glasses were cut crystal. "Waterford," Meri told him, as she saw him examining them. They were old-fashioned coupes with wedge and leaf cuts rising from the bases and entwining up the stems to hold the bottom of the glasses bowls like sepals of sparkling glass flowers. The rims of the glasses were startlingly emerald green, and just below the green of the rims were cut borders of tiny green-centered flowers and some other goodies I will show you after we have a drink. She opened the bottle and poured each of them half a glass, looked deeply into Follet's eyes, and said, "God bless us both who drink this mead. May it always fill our every need. Schlante." She again brought the glass to just before her lips, to nose the amber liquid, and whispered, "The sweetness of the honey, and the faint notes of the flowers that gave of themselves to create the sweetness. Wild mountain thyme, sweet pea, honeysuckle, meadow sweet," and tilted the glass to sip the nectar. Follet did the same and closed his eyes, letting the aroma and taste fill him. "What's in the other little bottles? More to drink?" "You'll get to enjoy them soon, Follet," she told him.